Welcome to the Shopify App Show. My name's Martin. I've been working in the Shopify ecosystem for 14 years, working with retailers all over the world. I've decided to start this podcast to shine a light on some of the apps that are doing the most innovative stuff on Shopify, using new features, reimagining core functionality, and setting the trends for the future. There's thousands of apps in the Shopify App Store, but what excites me most is there's always something new to check out. On the flip side, it also can be pretty daunting. There's always a million options for everything, it feels like. Every day you can try a new app in your store. Sometimes they're great, sometimes they're not so great, and I think it's really important to share those learnings as a community. So that's why I've started this show. I believe the best innovation in Shopify isn't coming from the platform itself or the VC-backed giants or the big platforms that you hear about every day and get the spam from. It's coming from the indie developers, the small, obsessed teams building craft products. This show is about finding them, hearing their stories, and helping you to build a better tech stack for your e-commerce business. This is not a product demo show. We're not being paid by any of our guests, although we'd obviously love you to sponsor us. If you've got an app you'd like to feature too, please reach out, and I'd also love to hear your feedback. All right. Hi, Josh, and welcome to the Shopify App Show. Thanks so much for joining us. We're both beaming in from different parts of the Sunshine State, Queensland today. So thanks for your time and thanks for joining us. Now, it's a real privilege to have you on our first episode of this show. I guess we're really wanting to showcase indie app developers, and I think you probably personify that better than anyone. You're someone who's worked at the mothership at Shopify for a few years as a launch engineer and worked at that real enterprise level of e-commerce, and then you've gone away and built your own thing, found a gap in the market, and come up with Countertop Dev and a studio dedicated entirely to Shopify point of sale. Does that sum you up enough on the intro? Is there anything I've missed off your resume there?
Yeah, no, I was looking back, it's been like a good couple of years now, at least, since I was at Shopify. So It's crazy to hear it summed up in a sentence or two, but that's exactly it. Yeah. That's, Countertop's focusing just on point of sale. And it's a really interesting niche to be in. So excited to talk on it. And thanks for having me as well.
No, absolute pleasure. And ex-Shopify is a bit of a badge of honor on the on the LinkedIn profile these days, isn't it? You see it popping up more and more, and it's good. It's certainly a great experience you've got there. But you've jumped out of there and gone into probably one of the hardest areas, I'd say, in the Shopify app world, in building stuff for Shopify POS, because it's I guess it doesn't have the same penetration as the e-commerce part of the platform. It's traditionally been really hard to customize and do things on it outside of the box. So you've kind of picked one of the hardest areas. What drove you down that path?
Yeah, it's, like the jury's still out as well as to whether I made the right call or not. So I'll preface it with all of that, but things are going really well and I'm really happy with it. And it matches with kind of the business and stuff that I'm trying to build. So far so good. And I think a lot of the things, you mentioned the market penetration, the smaller space, some of the technical challenges, they were also kind of a lot of the reasons that maybe drove me to look at point of sale. So when I left, I had two other software products that I kind of spent some time developing and learning more about the business side and building those up. And while I was doing that, I knew that I was coming back to Shopify. Like that was always the end goal of where I wanted to be building. And so I looked at B2B, I looked at checkout, I looked at kind of the whole surface as much as I could of Shopify and tried to leverage, the experience of talking to merchants and from my previous role. You quickly realize because things move so fast that experience quickly devalues as well. So that was interesting. But the thing that drove me to point of sale was, one, the current state was a little bit stale. Like you said, you pretty much had to build things within an iframe. And so there are some really interesting teams that I can talk about that have been in point of sale for 10 years and they've got some really good experience. But so the current state was a little bit stale, but there was these new things called UI extensions that had just come out. And to me, that was really interesting because there was going to be this opportunity to build all these new solutions and stuff. So that was really interesting. And then from the technical side, like, so I knew there was going to be some good stuff to build. And then from the business side, I knew that, a little bit of people were a bit hesitant to kind of work with it, but it was also like such a core part of like big brands, right? So once you get to that plus level, you often have some type of in-store presence. It might just be a pop-up, a couple of times a year, or it might be 10 locations or 100 locations. So whether or not people wanted to work with point of sale, it was going to be like you had to work with it. And so I knew there was an opportunity there for me to maybe bridge that gap between, what the agencies were doing, and I could kind of work alongside them and also work alongside Shopify. So they're putting out these new products, UI extensions and stuff. How can I kind of be the one to showcase, hey, here's what you can actually build with them? And so that would be a really good exposure. So all those things, and like, being the size and business and stuff that I'm trying to build, like you do have to be particularly careful with what you're building and the problems that you're looking at. And so the fact that I knew point of sale was going to take some time to really develop in market was kind of a good thing as well, because I wasn't in the space to be competing with, huge VC funds or whatever and big apps and stuff. Like I was willing to take a bit of time and grow alongside, like as the product grew. So yeah, that's where I landed. And then I just doubled down. Yeah. That was the main thing.
Yeah, awesome. The thing that gave me a little shudder then was when you mentioned the iframe way of building them in the past, and yeah, it has come a long way, and you tapped in at a good time, I think, in that regard. Yeah, the UI extensions really changed it, and yeah, now you're in a position where there actually is some cool stuff you've built, and so you've got the 3 apps at the moment. Which one of them came first?
So Shop Fields, which just lets you attach custom information to orders and products. That was the first one, yeah.
Cool.
And I guess...
so, yeah, it sounds pretty basic.
Yeah, and it really was. And like, so I would say even the first couple of apps fairly basic, because they were partly like a learning experience for me in terms of like what's going to work and like how do you position. Like the other hard thing with point of sale is like, even from like an install perspective, like it's a little bit different to normal apps in that you install the app, but then you also have to go through the process of adding it to devices and hardware and stuff and checking permissions. So there's a lot of different business flows that I had to learn and build in. And then just the APIs were still pretty primitive. So I basically saw that, hey, you could do order attribute stuff and line item properties. What could you build with that? And then I kind of reflected back on, my time in launch engineering at Shopify. What were some of the real like utility apps that I remember, like Mechanic and Excelify and stuff like that, or Matrixify rather. Like these were apps that basically solved a particular problem, but like unlocked a lot of other things. And I think that's what point of sale kind of needed was, how can you build an app that's flexible enough to solve a lot of different use cases? And then from those use cases, you might get some other interesting insights into other things to build and, what direction to point the business and stuff in as well.
Yeah, cool. And so, like, you obviously I think pretty boring things that people do with it, and those boring things are pretty important when you just can't capture specific information on the checkout, and things that are actually easy to do via an online store can be quite limited to do in POS. But I'd love to also hear, are there any sort of examples of people really pushing the boundaries of it, and anything a little bit strange or crazy that people have used it for that you weren't expecting to see?
There has been. It is a boring app. So, and like, I take pride in that. Like it should be boring. It's you want it to run your stores, you want it to be, stable and stuff. So the thing that surprised me has been kind of the range of stores. And I didn't expect that in point of sale. I expected it to be all, fashion, some cosmetic stuff, like similar to what you see online. But like point of sale, and you can tell when merchants are point of sale first, because like their Shopify URL is usually some random characters. Like they've obviously signed up through point of sale and just been given a domain. So you can see merchants that are point of sale first and then maybe going into online. But, you get Christmas tree stores and museums and just like really bizarre stuff. And the things they're capturing are normally still pretty standard. So they're looking at how do we capture a customer's preference, or how do we add some extra shipping information? Like, they're doing some buy online, pick up in store kind of stuff. The ones that I find particularly interesting are the blended kind of stores. So like my wife worked in a winery when I was kind of building shop fields, and same with like so wineries, coffee stores, stuff like that, where there's this mix of they're kind of hospitality, but they're also selling stuff like in store and online. And so I enjoy working with those ones because you have to have an app that's like very fast and like can handle that hospitality, like really quick sale, but also, you know, enables like upsells or like those kind of bigger picture type of things. So those ones are the type that I kind of have in my head when I'm building stuff is like, how do you cater for both? And how do you, like every time I'm in a coffee shop or even just like, you know, normal retail stores, I kind of watch them use the point of sale and, you know, you're thinking about like, well, what if they could do this? And most of the time, like you've never been able to really customize a point of sale like this. Like the last one I used properly was Retail Express, and that was still like a DOS almost dashboard, right? So like the idea of being able to have that online store flexibility in store is really exciting. And that's kind of hopefully what I'm getting towards.
Yeah, cool. And do you find, I'd love to know if you agree with me on this statement a little bit. I reckon point of sale is one of those things that everyone hates their point of sale system to an extent. There's not too many people who say they love their point of sale system regardless of what it is.
I'd love to, I think that's pretty fair. I don't know. I feel like even, especially on like the tablet stuff, and like I have a POS Go down there, which I bring that up all the time because I'm a little bit bitter they got rid of that.
Yeah.
Like I think like the idea of point of sale is a little bit different now as well. Like in the smaller kind of shops, like it's a very like enabling tool to be able to go search up products, search up a customer, and it's not these random like, you know, having to, like I said, like a DOS dashboard or whatever. But yeah, there's always some aspect to it that's not good. And like even just the people who are using it, right? Like that's another challenge is oftentimes the people who are setting up the app aren't the people who are actually using it. So you have to kind of think about different personas of people using the app as well. But no, that's a fair assumption. Hopefully we can change that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, and so you talk about your app being a bit boring. I agree with you. I think that's the best word that people can use to describe an app that does what it does. So I think that's a great thing. But yeah, the scan to add, that's a little bit more. That's got a little bit more bells and whistles to it. Was that the second one that you came up with?
Yeah. So yeah, second app was scan to add, and it started off as actually a bit of a learning project. I had shop fields. It was kind of stable and doing what I wanted it to do. There was still some limitations, but I wanted to think about what's next. And one of the things you have in POS is access to the camera. And, you know, talking about like future of retail and stuff like that, I thought like that's pretty cool that, you know, if I was working back when I was doing retail, like front of house stuff, like what if I'd had access to a camera that could instantly scan products and look up, you know, best practice and like, you know, help scan a customer. Like it kind of unlocks some cool stuff. So I wanted to learn basically how to work with the camera in point of sale. And that's the project that came out of it. So it just basically lets you scan like products or discount codes or customer QR codes and add them to the cart. So it was very much like a process kind of tool, like just let things happen faster. Ballooned a little bit into, okay, you scan a product, but is it the right product? Or so you then have to do, you know, API searches behind to do some kind of fuzzy search and kind of extending. To be honest, I actually expected Shopify would have replaced some of this by now. Like they would have built this into the native scanner. And I was surprised even when I first built it that like you can't do this in point of sale.
Yeah.
So that was interesting, and it might still be the case that, you know, they do replace it. But I think what'll be so the next API version doesn't actually have a camera scanner component.
Yeah.
Which was really interesting. And then I've heard kind of whispers that like they're going to expand upon that in like a couple of API versions time. So I don't know exactly what that looks like, but hopefully scan to ads in a place where, you know, if Shopify wants to introduce 3D scanning or something cool that, you know, phone cameras could all do now, we'll be in a place to take advantage of that. But yeah, it was really very much like a learning experience on how to work with the camera. And then that work actually fed back into some of the scanning stuff in shop fields and then some of the future stuff as well.
Yeah, awesome. So at the moment, QR codes, I think are sort of, it feels like the world's conquered QR codes now. And now we're moving into that, the 3D 3D scanning mode, and yeah, like I've got a candle sitting here in front of me here. Like, should we be able to, yeah, like how far are we off being able to scan a product just with a camera and then add it to cart and complete the order that way?
Yeah, it'll be really like I've been interested in LiDAR stuff for ages. Like I remember when Shopify did, what was it? I think it was like Magnolia. Someone had like a product
Yep.
that you could load in 3D, and I was like, wow, this is awesome. Surely this is going to be everywhere next year, and it just wasn't.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting, like scanning stuff, and even like maybe image recognition. I think could be a big one. So like,
Mm.
instead of having to look up a product, just open the camera, point it at the product, and it goes, hey, here's what it is. Like, stuff like that's totally doable these days. And yeah, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, cool. And so you say with the next API version that you're potentially going to lose some. Are you saying that you might lose some of the ability to scan products and do what you scan barcodes and stuff that you currently do?
Yeah, so the next version, which is where the UI extensions have all moved to Preact. So
Yep.
it's a big migration from like their side especially. And one of the things that's missing, I think there's no list component and there's no camera component, which are two pretty big ones.
Yeah.
So I'm holding out, and I think I'm still a couple of versions behind on scan to add.
Yep.
So I'll probably hold out until later this year, and we'll see what gets released. But yeah, those are the two big ones that I've noticed.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. And so how do you keep up with that stuff? Like it's you're obviously, particularly when you're relying on hardware and stuff as well, like the POS Go, as you mentioned, was just, that's an antique now. I've got 5 of them on my desk as well that got given to me by
True.
Shopify that you can't use. And so, yeah, how do you de-risk yourself from that and stay ahead of those changes?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm hoping those POS Goes will be like a collector's item or something. We never know. Yeah, so I think part of that is coming back to like the problem space that I wanted to get into, like because point of sale is pretty tightly defined in like what you can do. That again works in my favor. Like some people might see that a little bit limiting, but for me, it means that I don't have to spend all my time just doing API updates. So that's a really big one. The tooling is obviously really important, like being able to focus just on the product side and not have to worry too much about. In my previous software stuff, I had so many operational challenges of like support and, even just billing integrations because the previous platform didn't have the same type of partner ecosystem that Shopify does and partner tech. So that's a big one. But yeah, I think the benefit of point of sale is that it is fairly tightly defined. And like even on the POS Go thing, I was speaking to some people last week and like around the performance side of POS Go. So I think it's, maybe that's where it came from is you don't want to, when I was building a lot of these apps, I was having to test on Android devices and all these different things to make sure it runs fast. If they're stripping that back, getting rid of POS Go, setting the expectation that you should be running on iOS and, decent devices. And that's one less thing to kind of test. And so far it's been pretty reliable. I rarely get, if ever, people reaching out saying, hey, this isn't performing well on my device or something. Like it's pretty stable and pretty remarkable. Like, especially from a purely software thing, it is nice being able to build something and actually have it like, run on a hardware thing like that. That's also pretty fun to build on.
Yeah. Oh, that's it. The restraints there and the limitations in what you can build, in some ways it means that you've got less opportunity to build something that's broken, don't you? So I guess that's the upside of the limitations.
Yeah, that's it. And that's kind of been Shopify's thing, right? Is like building, you had a bit of a sandbox and you have to stay within that sandbox, but like all of guardrails is maybe a better word, but like at the same time, like the flexibility is still there, which is cool. Like you can still do a lot of good stuff and it's coming a long way now.
Yeah, cool. And tell me a little bit about, like, I guess you touched on it before, like dealing with retailers and particularly those that have multiple stores. It's a really different relationship to when you're in the more traditional e-commerce client relationship where they have an e-commerce team. They're pretty savvy. It's a small team as opposed to lots of people on the ground in lots of locations. And yeah, Chinese whispers messaging getting back to the e-com team or IT team or whoever it is. Like, how do you, what sort of support tickets do you get on a daily basis, and how do you keep that manageable?
It's actually been surprisingly good. Again, like, yeah, I had in my previous apps, like support was always a big issue. In these ones, I've found, stability is just always the main thing, because like they are using it in store and they can escalate so quickly, and that's going to potentially hold up a sale, like just focusing on that. And that's kind of the same with an online store app, right? Like you've got potentially thousands of customers using it. How do you make sure that it's going to scale up? In some ways, like scale is actually less of a concern with some of these apps because you're not getting thousands of customers, you're getting dozens of staff maybe. So that's a big one. The nice thing about the support, and I don't know if this is a Shopify thing or not, you would know more about this, but like it's been a lot more constructive than like previous support I've had. Like the people who do reach out have like good ideas. They're like, hey, like we want to do this. And like a lot of the times it's still just not a good fit for the app because it's such a bespoke kind of solution. So that's one thing I need to figure out is how do you provide that level of customization. But a lot of times it's like we had an agency reach out, or I had an agency reach out end of last year saying, hey, like, can we just, instead of having to go into the app, can we just make it so it's one tap and that applies some default value? And it's like, yeah, sure. Like, that saves staff a couple of seconds and that really adds up over the course of, a year or whatever. So just small improvements like that has generally been what I get from support. And then, you occasionally still get billing stuff, but with the tooling, Mantle and Gadget and stuff, that's all been super manageable.
Yeah, cool. And so like I think like I'd say also like part of the challenge for you, or not, maybe not such a challenge, but like we see all the time Shopify POS. Like I think there's a lot of people want to be on Shopify POS and buy the dream of having everything under one hood. And I think especially like you even see the recent announcements with UCP and being the platform becoming agent first, it's going to become even more important for people to have all of their data in one place, and have store inventory, store data all within that main platform. But the reality is a lot of businesses get stuck and can't actually make that transition. Do you get bogged down into that sort of part of the conversation very often? And how do you sort of see navigating that with businesses, or what's your message to businesses that struggling to make that transition that know they probably should?
It's a good, I mean, this is kind of, again, like it's surprising the similarities between point of sale and online in a lot of ways, because I remember again, like when I was doing launch stuff, so launch was like just after sales basically. And so you'd often hear like, they were still feeling that dream of like, oh, we're on Shopify, let's go. And a lot of the time, the big reason for moving over was having that like consolidated, one picture of things. We didn't want to have all these, integrations and stuff. We just thought we'll just have the Shopify and that'll handle all the data. And like, that's a big part of point of sale, I think, is like you don't want to have all these other integrations connecting things. That was a big reason behind Shopfields was, how do we bridge that gap? There's still point of sale, despite being able to pull in some of the data, it's not the same as like the Shopify admin. There's still some limitations there. Checkout in particular is like not the same checkout. So the idea of Shopfields was, let's at least capture the information and then you can do what you want with it. Now that it's actually attached to the order, attached to the product, then you can wrap up your other integrations and get it into Shopify and work with Flow. So I would say like the dream is still there, and point of sale is a really good channel for it. It's getting closer and closer to online store, particularly around the checkout. The thing that I'm really excited for this year, which I think will really like bridge it, is like better metafield usage. So like just being able to pull in all that custom data, having somewhere in Shopify for it to actually live, being metafields, being able to pull it into point of sale and then being able to actually interact with it. So I think that'll maybe bridge some of the gaps, but you would certainly know better about what lives on outside of that. There's some things like I'm a big fan of, the best part is no part kind of thing. If you can
Yeah.
have something that just fits into your existing flow and you don't have to worry about, because I've been there where like you're spending all your time maintaining systems instead of actually building product and doing things that move the needle. And that gets exhausting very quickly. So I'm trying to stay on that green path, integrate as tightly as I can, not add additional complexity, just fit into the existing kind of data that you have. And I think metafields are going to be a big part of that. So, yeah.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think, you talk there, like, I think, the challenge is also like where there's times when you want to build stuff for POS and you can't build even just things like having the exact same fields for checkout and point of sale checkout. That can be a frustration, and you end up having like to send different information to the ERP for different types of customers and stuff. So yeah, I'm with you there. Like metafields hopefully will help help bridge that gap, and we'll
Yeah.
all come up with smarter solutions for that type of thing.
Yeah. It'll be interesting because, like, again, it's different users, right? Like, I've had people ask, hey, what if we just gave this point of sale device to, and I'm sure you've had this as well, like give it to customers so they can check out. It's like a self-checkout thing. And it's just not really built for that. Like there's data access and all those kind of things. So yeah, it'd be very interesting being a fly on the wall of the POS team internally, because they're obviously having all these questions as well on, how do you find that balance, and how do you get an online store checkout, or, they might not even be thinking in those terms. But I think this year they've done a lot of, the APIs are all really good. The targets are all really good. There's a lot more components. So, and even just the space, like when I first got in, there was very few POS apps, and most of them were still on that kind of legacy flow we were talking about. Whereas now, like there's people doing exactly what Shopfields do. So, there'll be a lot more apps, and then that kind of kickstarts that flywheel potentially of, more apps means more merchants, means more apps. At least that's my thesis. That's what I'm betting on.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's a good segue. I wanted to also ask you about the Shopify POS app ecosystem. I was trying to actually find like how many Shopify POS related apps there are in the App Store and get some numbers around that, but it's actually sort of a little bit hard to find out. But I'd love to know just what else you're seeing and other apps that you think are doing a great job and doing innovative things that you come across.
Yeah, it is interesting trying to find the numbers, because I've tried several times. There's this weird blend of like kind of legacy and apps that say they work on retail, but they don't really. They're just kind of even original idea of mine was, if you wanted to get into the space, just look at apps that haven't migrated to the UI extensions, and I'm sure there'd still be some really big ones. Even just building connectors for big apps, right?
Yeah,
but there are some really, really cool things happening. So I had a chat with Jordan Vinnerin, who's doing a Pimsicle, and he's got like a retail OS, but his kind of main project at the moment is doing stock takes. So I know that's been going really well. And he actually, I think he won one of the Shopify Community Awards last year, which is awesome. Down the road in Toowoomba, I think there's Empower, and they're doing like a hospitality suite. So they've got POS Cafe, which will be, I think that's a really good idea, and hopefully that goes quite a while. There's a company called Easy Team who do like payroll and HR. And I respect those guys a lot, because they've been doing it for a long time, like since that legacy app stage, and they've made the migration over to the new thing. So I think they've got a lot of really good experience there. But just even the agencies, and like that's probably the biggest one is, you look at like particularly in Australia, it's Swanky, and like I could list a whole bunch of agencies that have just done amazing work on the retail hospitality side, moving up to it. And I haven't seen a lot moving into UI extensions. I think second half of last year, there was a few that did some like analytics and stuff. But I think probably see a little bit more of this year with people like T-Fire doing some product stuff. So, but just in terms of like the build and they've always done amazing on the online side, and then they've added the point of sale, and like you guys have obviously done a lot of really good builds as well. And like, it's that full picture of like in-store and online. And I think that deserves a lot of kudos as well to, because that's what got it here as well, right? Like people driving home about integrated payment terminals, and back when that was still the biggest issue of we can't have an FPOS machine attached. So yeah, but those are probably the big ones that stick out in my head. Yeah.
Yeah, the other one I've seen is the furniture industry as well. There's a lot of innovation happening in that
Yeah.
space as well. I know we've worked with a few furniture retailers where they've got things like made to order and stock that's not arriving for a while, and building out those custom experiences
Yeah.
is an area that there's a lot of nuance to it, and you think it, and like you say with the cafes and stuff like that, it'll be interesting to see if Shopify does become something that becomes becomes a real thing that cafes and those types of businesses start using.
Yeah, that's like a B2B is the other one as well. That I
Yeah,
guess kind of on a similar point. It's like if POS kind of ends up being useful for B2B to, just go out in the field and, making sales like that could be really cool.
yeah,
What was I going to say? Yeah, no, that's it. But yeah, there's some limitations on kind of the architecture side that I think are limiting some of this,
mm,
like how extensions are built, and like, we can get into the weeds if you like, but um, I think that's maybe one of the limiting things on doubling down on certain verticals is that it is still a little bit sandboxed, and like for good and bad reasons. But
yeah,
that'll be interesting to see this year how those plays out in B2B, and yeah, like you say, like furniture and
yeah.
really like tailored solutions.
Yeah, I think it's that journey piece, isn't it? Like you can insert stuff into the POS system, but it's actually how you, like where you need to ask a series of questions that are conditional and layered, and that part of it's the bit where, yeah, we need to find some new ways to do that because, or the platform needs to release some more openness there because that'll just open up the POS platform to all kinds of opportunities.
Yeah, and like the approach today is you're building on targets, so you have like these surfaces that you could build across, and that's great coming back to someone like me, like having a very specific area that you build in. But in terms of like a workflow, maybe a little bit limiting for some use cases.
Yeah, yeah, that's it. And so my last thing I was going to ask you about is I guess I'm sure you've still got lots of mates at Shopify, so mate, you're probably already hassling them about this, but like if you could ask them for one thing or get them to release something to help you build your next big idea, what would it be?
Oh, is you know what? Yeah, it's hard to think of one because to be honest, they've been shipping at a pretty good speed. Like,
Yeah,
um, I mean, I do have a list somewhere which I should have read. I've
yeah,
got like dot points on like, hey, there was a lot of little things. So like when I
yeah.
built shop fields, you couldn't split line item properties. So that took a while to get fixed. And there's a few niggly little things like that. None that I would, start hassling people for. I used to hassle them on Slack a fair bit, and then they shut that down. So I
Yeah,
can't do that anymore.
yeah.
Yeah, the big ones are probably more to do with that architecture style. And they've been doing a really good job on the developer experience. So like 12 months ago, the experience of you'd basically make a change, have to grab your phone, scan this QR code to load it onto your device, and then you'd make a change and you didn't know if it actually refreshed. So the amount
Yeah.
of times I'd spend just debugging something that I'd actually already fixed and not knowing it because it hadn't updated on the device or something, and getting carpal tunnel just from lifting my phone so much
Yeah.
was ridiculous. And so like the strides they'd made in the last 12 months to make that developer experience just absolutely night and day, that's unlocked a lot of like just the complexity of the last. So I released an analytics app last year, which is still a little bit kind of under the covers. And then like another app that I'm going to release this quarter. Those are like a lot more complex than the two that I have available today. And they just wouldn't have been possible if that developer experience hadn't changed, because
Yeah.
I would have pulled my hair out and, given up and gone and done something else. So I think that's the only thing I'd say is just like keep improving that
Mm.
developer experience. Access to stuff is great. Having better installs are great. More around, there was one. It's just to do with like around API requests and stuff like that. Opening a link, actually, if you want one that you could do this week, if they're listening, if I could open a link from within point of sale, that'd be nice, just to link to documentation and stuff. But the other stuff is developer experience and, maybe extending some of the targets that are available so we can just embed ourselves in POS more and more.
Yeah, awesome. And you said you've got another app coming this quarter. Are you able to give any clues about what it is, or is it all under lock and key?
Yeah. It's so I did like a tiny demo on LinkedIn the other day. The intent was like I wanted to build something a little bit bigger to try and get myself out of that platform risk trap where, you're building something. If you build something too small, it's not sustainable. If you do build something too big, then the platform's inevitably going to build it, and make something a little bit more defensible and kind of really utilize my experience on how I think Shopify should kind of, like, if you're building an app, how to build it like as natively as possible and tightly integrated. And so it started out as this kind of massive app builder project where you could use any of the POS components and basically build this really complex, anything you wanted in point of sale using the components. And then the POS team were just kind of moving that fast that it was just hard to keep that kind of app maintained. And it also just frankly got too complex. When I was demoing it with merchants and stuff, it was like they didn't even know where to start. So stripped that back down, went away, worked on some other stuff, came back to it end of last year, and just decided to focus purely on meta fields. So that's something that people already have. They understand it. And, I can see from a lot of the data that I have from these other apps that it's something people are interested in. And so the idea is basically taking your existing meta fields, loading them into like an app builder essentially, but a very simple one, and then being able to build dashboards and kind of light interactive apps within point of sale. Just to, again, the idea is bridging that gap between online, offline. So I'm pretty excited for that one. Again, I think the positioning and marketing and all that is always the hardest bit with any app. Particular point of sale, I'm still figuring out what that looks like. But I think it's got a lot of really good use cases and a lot of good opportunity for, even if you're only doing the online build and you want to build point of sale on the side, this will help with some of that is my goal.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I feel like the stuff you're building becomes almost like an extension of the platform, which is what a good app should be. And and I love seeing what you're doing, and so grateful to have had you on the show today. I think, as you say, it's something that can be a boring topic if you're not particularly interested in it, but I think it legitimately excites me what you're doing in this space. And talking to the teams around me and some of the merchants I've worked with, they are really valuing all the work you're doing, and you're doing God's work in the space. So no, thank you so much. And I should just let you just tell us what the best way is to check out your apps. Although I'm sure people can just Google countertop and come up with it. Is there any other plug I should give for how to reach out to you or get in touch?
Yeah, no. Well, thank you for having me as well. I'm a small one-person team, so I really appreciate all these chats. And if you're a merchant, always feel free to reach out. Yeah, reach out at countertop.dev is kind of the portfolio site for these apps, and I'm on LinkedIn, so that's probably a great place to reach out. I'm probably on there too much, but I do some posts there, and you're always welcome to send me a message. So thank you very much.
No, you do share great stuff on LinkedIn. So, which is very valuable in there because there's a lot of people don't share good stuff. So, look, it's been, but it's been an absolute pleasure. And thank you to anyone who's listening to this. I think, I've gained a lot just from this conversation. So I hope that anyone listening has as well. And, look forward to seeing what comes over the next, 6-12 months in the POS space, and I'm sure you've got your finger to the pulse on it, and we'll be doing more amazing things. So no, thanks so much, Josh, and thanks everyone for tuning in.